So Chris is a fantastic business angel and investor and entrepreneur in the food service sector. Australia, Singapore, the UK, wherever you've been all over the place. So I would like to hand over the responsibility to you now to run the following session, of course, giving your own view, your own take on it.
Yes.
Then introducing a fantastic speaker from the UK called Popovich. And then running the panel, the future of service, with Nick. Martin Berg is coming back. We have a couple of other ones as well. Ulrika Brydling, the chef, and Magnus Leidner from Beijing 8 as well, and to then discuss the future of service and how that also can affect retail, of course. But you'll get into that. So the stage is yours.
Thank you,
I'll go
Johan.
and have a cup of coffee.
Thank you, Johan. So thank you, Johan, and thank you everyone for having me. And thank you, Johan, for the very interesting topic, like the future according to Chris. I thought, okay, this is kind of ridiculous. I'm out here talking about the future to a bunch of food tech experts. What do I know? It's interesting because he's partly pushed me to think in a different way. And what I thought I would do is I would share, I guess, a couple of the key overarching ideas that I have about how I've been thinking about food tech in the last few years. And what I do is talk about those two big ideas, which is more general, and then bring it back a little bit more closely to talk about how it relates to food tech and hospitality and restaurant, and so on. But before I do that, I thought it would be helpful to give a little bit of background just to bit about background and sort of where I've come from. I'm the ex-CEO of Crush, Fit Food and Juice Bars in London. It's a healthy eating chain. We've got about 30-odd stores in London, and basically ran that business for the last 13 years. So been very much at the forefront of healthy food, innovation, NPD. That's the fun part of the job. That's partly my bag, so to speak. And we've had a lot of fun over the years coming up with new products and so on. One of the things that I'm doing now is I'm taking a step out of that and back into looking at how we look at food tech and from an investment perspective. Prior to doing Crush, I actually worked at Bain & Co., a consulting firm, and I actually was back here in 2000, 2001, living in Stockholm. So it's lovely to be back, and it's been great to reconnect with people. And on Crush, coming out of that, I've now really focused on where do I want to play in the food tech space. So what I thought I'd do is actually talk a little bit about how I think about food tech as a different definition. I wasn't really originally going to do this, but I thought no one's really put that up in this food tech conference. So Jurka yesterday was talking about old school food tech, which is kind of where I actually understand food tech, which is process improvement on food processing, improved food production. This is kind of, I guess, my definition, following on from Johann's future according to Chris, any technological innovation along the whole food value chain that can potentially disrupt the way we produce, consume, and interact with food. So I use that as trying to, I looked at a whole bunch of different food tech definitions. Most of them are paragraphs long. Try to keep it as succinct as possible. And the way I think about that is to produce food, it is basically from the lab or the farm to your plate. From consume, it's basically from your plate to your fork. And then the interact with is actually around from the fork to your thoughts. And what I mean by thoughts, it's about the whole interaction where you're talking about everything from your sensory sort of exploration. So, what do things taste like, what do they sound like, to AR, VR, any of this sort of stuff, and how we think about food. And also what it leaves with us afterwards in terms of memories. So that's how I try to think about food tech. And given that we're in Stockholm, and I thought I'd share this with you from being here last year. This is something so the NPD stuff, we're talking about cellular ag, talking about plant-based meat yesterday. This is something I was mucking around with. I was back in San Francisco in February this year, and I was on a hunt, checking out Impossible Burger. Absolutely loved it. So I managed to, what you see, that's probably actually illegal. I managed to smuggle somehow a raw patty of Impossible Burger back into London, left it for a week to age, just inadvertently, and try to create a steak tartare, an Impossible steak tartare out of it. And I use Stefan's CRISPR kale from last year, mucked around with that. In there, there's CBD truffle oil. So truffle oil for the taste and the flavor, but CBD as in cannabis oil. So cannabis is probably the new sort of super ingredient that everyone's starting to get into in Canada and US. It's starting to come out to Europe. So that in itself probably will get me into jail somewhere, somehow. And balsamic pearls, and it's a representation of all of things around sort of food tech, if you like. So that's got a bit of fun in terms of what I do. That sort of leads into, I guess, the number of things I'm now involved in. So this past year or so, a couple of years, I've been focusing on working with a number of different food tech businesses. And I'm trying to effectively, I guess, as a board advisor, help create a billion pounds of value in these businesses that I'm working with and involved with over the next 7 to 10 years. Kind of a crazy goal, but that's the intention. Won't dwell so much on it. Last year I was talking about Mr. Lee's Noodles, which is the healthy pot noodle with smart vending machines. The guys have been doing fantastically well. We're about to go into 1,000 supermarkets in Australia next month, as well as the UK supermarkets as well. Mr. Lee's and Pasta Evangelist, both of them just got into the top 100 UK startups. So very excited about that. Ambi and Cheerfy are hospitality tech. So that's going to relate. I'll talk a bit more about that in terms of how it fits into restaurants and so on. And so on. So what I look for, if I think about actually what I look for when I look at these businesses and why I get involved with them, I'm looking for founders and businesses. Everyone knows you're looking for a great team, great market. But what I look for in particular as well is I look for mini monopolies. Can a business find and create a mini monopoly? I look for ecosystem plays, and also I look for domain knowledge. So what I found is that there's a lot of tech people trying to do food, relatively fewer food people that have proper food experience that are semi-literate in tech. And the domain knowledge comes into play because what I'm able to see is what a non-operator can't see, and that's where some of the value is. And then the last piece I look for is doing something good for the world. And this leads to, I guess, the theme of the two overarching themes. So, has anyone heard of James Halperin? He's a futurist. Anyone? No? Okay, good. He's a futurist, so the assertion that I'm going to have is that all the stuff that's been happening in the last couple of years with food tech, trends and so on, has actually been predicted almost a quarter of a century ago. Probably more than half a lifetime for most of us here. And what those big ideas are about are actually around two things that, to some extent, these two books are about. So James Halperin is an author. He was a futurist, and he wrote these books back in 1996, 1998. The first one is called The Truth Machine. So like I said, this is going to be a little bit out there, so bear with me, hear me out. Truth Machine is based on the premise that we're in the future, and humans are actually their own worst enemy. We're going to destroy ourselves and kill ourselves, make ourselves extinct through our own actions of deceit, lying, and so on, and dishonesty before any sort of natural disaster or any asteroid that Elon Musk thinks is going to hit us is going to happen. And as a result, the book is about, it's a speculative novel. So it was written back in 1996 based on science fact of the time and projected forward. And he writes about the fact that there's an equivalent of Zuckerberg or Bill Gates who creates this 100% accurate lie detector. And this lie detector, and he's created a backdoor to this somehow, and that's what the story is about. But the principle around the fact that we will move into a society where there's 100% truth, there's no war, there's no crime, there's no sort of dishonesty, no politics. That's an interesting world. And actually, bizarrely, for the last 20 years, since I've been reading this book, I've actually used that in the back of my mind on how I build my own business in terms of Crush and how I operate as a human being. And if you think about what are the implications now, so bear in mind this is written in 1996. Today, in the last couple of years, what have we seen? We've seen the Me Too movement, right? We've seen social media creating all sorts of different things. Now, the social media part of it is all around, actually, it's truth machine by triangulation. So what's been happening, you've had a lot of things that have been hidden behind doors. Now with the truth coming out, that truth machine is effectively holding people to account. Harvey Weinstein, for example. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with Trump and so on. That, I imagine that's going to be a blip, but some of that stuff will come out, and the truth machine is kind of what this is. In the book, it talks about it being 2026 is the year this thing is created. We're now in 2018. It's only 6 years away. Actually, we kind of have it in place, because if you think about each of these things that you have in your pocket, the smartphone, right? You've got each of these. If you imagine trying to create, accidentally having, a crime, you accidentally commit murder or something like that, that smartphone has your entire history of geolocation, what you're doing, when you're doing, and all that sort of stuff. It's very, very hard to actually break away from that. It's measuring what you eat, what you do. So there in itself is a truth machine. You add on to that the kind of things we've been talking about the last couple of days around blockchain. So Oliver from Chain Vine, we're talking about blockchain for wine and provenance of food. That's another truth machine. So when you start layering these things together, that creates a truth machine today. And so I guess I put this out to you all to think about what are the implications of this when we look at any business in the food tech space. So that's the first one. The second one is this book, First Immortal, also by James Halpern. He wrote this 2 years later, again based on science fact projected forward. And it's talked about the point at which we effectively solve for aging. And aging is an illness. And the first immortal person that has been frozen in cryonics has been reconstituted, if you like, in the year 2080 or so, which is not that far away. I've just spent the last week in Sardinia, which is one of the blue zones, where people have lived to, the centenarians, at something called AFES, where the topic was kind of a crazy place. The topic was about longevity. And we had people like Michel Poulain, who popped in, who's the guy who did the demographic studies for the blue zones. People are doing a whole documentary about it, and Ben Greenfield, who's a biohacker, and so on. The interesting thing about First Immortal and also longevity, the research basically says, of course it's about the nutrition that we heard about before and what you eat and moderate exercise. But the single biggest thing that actually makes a difference for centenarians is community. And community, and ikigai, the Japanese call it ikigai, the purpose of life. And community is the one thing, with family and so on, that makes the biggest difference. And that is a key thing that we want to relate back into how we think about the restaurant tech and hospitality tech, which I'll talk about in a bit. So First Immortal, if you think about the book, it talks about everything from nanotechnology, which we talked about yesterday, regenerative cells, stem cell therapy, how can you grow a liver, how can you grow a heart, and so on. And that was all based on actual science fact and research back in '98, 20 years ago. We talk about artificial intelligence in there and a whole range of other things. So if you want to see the future, read these two books. Highly recommend it. And it gives you a frame of how you think about all the things that are happening now and provides some answers and runway to how it might pan out. So I'm going to bring it a little bit closer to things. We've gone out, that's 50, 60 years, coming back to sort of more immediate sort of things. These are three areas of interest, just purely personal interest on the future of food tech and restaurants that I'm looking at the moment because I think there's some gaps. First one is around tech-enabled food delivery and mobile payments. As you know, you've got Deliveroo, Uber Eats, all of that, especially in the UK, US, doing very well. You've got Amazon Go, where you can just literally walk in and take your stuff and leave without having to do anything. This is all around getting rid of friction back of house. And also to sort of make the front of house a little bit quicker. The key thing there is actually the underlying trends around convenience. There's a whole bunch of things going on, but what is missing? And if there's a startup out there that is solving this, please let me know, because the gap that is that as an operator, when running Crush, I would have, for example, 40 different systems, back-of-house systems, front-of-house systems, till systems, and so on. You need a way to aggregate it all. So if you imagine you go in, you order from Deliveroo, then you have something from Uber Eats, and then from Feeder, and so on. You've got about 5 different iPads sitting on your till counter. We don't want that. We want to have one source where actually it automatically sorts out, this is your Uber Eats order, the next one happens to be Deliveroo, third one is Feeder, and so on and so forth. All seamless. So we're in a state of flux at the moment, but when someone's able to do that, please let me know. That becomes quite interesting. The second part I'm interested in, personalized food. So we've been talking a lot about personalized nutrition. Nick, who's speaking afterwards, has effectively done that with software. the 3D food printer, Foodini, which I love a lot, the guys from Foodini, what they're doing is pretty amazing. It allows you to effectively choose what you want to eat and with the right nutritional profile. So if you then put that out into space, like I think Stefan was talking about yesterday, it becomes very, very interesting. Now, the gap here that I'm looking at is the fact that we have the blood work that we talked about, we have gut biome, we have 23andMe, things like that, we've got exercise trackers, and we've got the food that we eat. The problem that's still a gap, which the LifeSum guys were talking about last year, is the fact that people don't have a way, an automatic way, to input what they're actually eating, the nutrition-wise. People make things up, people forget, and it's not accurate. When we close that loop, then we're going to have something interesting. So people are talking about stents, into your blood vessels, nicotine patches, whatever. We haven't got there yet. There's people trying it, but to get it to the mass market, I think there needs a rethink on how we do that. So that's the second part. And the third one of interest is around what I call data-driven artificial intelligence sort of music and customer experiences. This goes back to, I guess, the hospitality, more the restaurant side of things. Now, Ambi is the music company I'm involved in, which effectively use AI and machine learning to create amazing playlists. I'm invested in a company called PaveGen, the V up there. So if you imagine this is, PaveGen is a footfall technology. So you basically step on it and your kinetic energy converts into electricity and data. So I'm involved in a project called the University of Future a learning hotel with the University of Surrey. They're about to spend about £35 million on a new learning hotel, and I'm going to get involved in terms of helping curate the technology that goes into this future hotel and future restaurants. So one of the things that we've been talking about is that what I'm trying to do is create this element of a closed loop engagement where if you imagine you walk into a store like a Crush, there's a mat well. That mat well, as you step on it, automatically senses exactly that you've come in, and you can work out at any point in time the number of people in there. And then it gets to a point of the automatic input into music, which affects your mood. And then if you imagine that, you can then control that music to allow people to enjoy and have a longer dwell time, and then buy more or consume more, enjoy that surrounding a lot more. Now, you can demonstrate that in a quantified number of, say, 10% increase in revenue and so on. Imagine the implications of that. Focus at Will, that little red thing there, it's an app I use. It's highly recommended. It's just great. It helps you concentrate and focus on things. And it's amazing. It uses binaural beats. It actually works. So if you imagine you can a future where you can put that into Ambi, the music, and you actually really, really start controlling how you feel. And this is what I mean by the interact with food element, right? It is your thoughts. How does that impact your whole experience of a restaurant? So we bring into this, AR, VR, gamification, all these things are coming into it in the future. The big question for me here is all around actually what is the balance between human nature and all this sort of automation and so on. Because at the end of the day, if we go back to the blue zone things, the blue zone sort of reason for living longer, it's all around community. If we look at Stefan's presentation on space yesterday, space food, what did he talk about? He talked about the dining part in the spaceship as being an absolute key part of the community experience as well. So restaurants, I think, and all the tech companies out here looking at the hospitality space, that's the gap that you need to understand which side you fall on. So quick whistle-stop tour of a few of the things that I found interesting. Next. Okay, thanks. So, okay, so thank you for that. So the last thing I wanted to leave you with was the fact that if we take these two ideas, how does that go back into your own thinking in terms of food tech? The other part, of course, is if you can help me in some way get those portfolio companies up to £1 billion of value, come and find me. Would love to talk. And anyone that has ideas around what kind of tech to go into the future of a hotel and restaurant, also be very interested to have a chat. Thank you very much. I'll speak to you soon.
So,
great. So, I'm going to introduce Nick Popovich from Vitamojo, is that right?
That's right.
Welcome,
Chris.
welcome. Here's the clicker.
Thank you.
Show's all yours. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nick. As Chris said, I'm the co-founder of Vitamojo. We Vitamojo believe that everyone's different. When it comes to food, we all have different tastes, different lifestyles, different goals, and different DNAs. So we have built a company that helps diners, customers like you, figure out what's right to eat, as well as help restaurants produce the kind of food that's right for people. Before I go any deeper into what we do, I want to share a personal story that will kind of help illustrate why I'm doing this. I started my career in finance in Wall Street in New York. Then I moved to London. Things were going great from strength to strength. And 8 years in, I got sick. No one knew what was wrong with me. And I went through a journey of about a year of trying to figure out what's wrong. And long story short, I changed my diet, and it changed my life. Within 3 months of changing my diet, I went from 20% vital signs to 100% vital signs. Went back to the doctors. They're like, wow, magic. What did you do? I was like, nothing. I just stopped eating crap. From that moment on, I understood that food is fuel. I mean, try not eating for a month and see what happens, if you don't believe me. And I left finance with the journey to start Vitamojo, to start a company whose mission is to help people eat better. So the way we wanted to do this was through technology. We wanted to build a technology stack to help people do that. We believed we had much more impact through technology than we had through building restaurants. So we started imagining, what does the restaurant of the future look like? Well, it had 3 things. First, it's personalized. That's a must for us. As we said, we're all different. And personalized here, we look at it in 3 ways. The experience is personalized, the food is personalized, but also the marketing, kind of everything that goes around it is personalized. Second is automated, and I'll come to that in a second. And third, you have data-driven operations rather than kind of feelings or manager-driven operations. Right, so Johan asked me kindly to be here and talk, and he wanted me to answer the question, what came first, the software or the restaurant? Well, we started as a software, as the idea is mentioned, but we couldn't get any traction. We went to all the big restaurant groups and we said, look, we have this great vision, we have this great MVP, buy our product, it's gonna make massive difference. And they all said no. About 6 months that this won't work. People don't want to personalize their food. They don't want to make any choices about food. Kitchens can't produce it. You just don't understand the industry. Fuck off. So I said, okay, game on. We ended up building a restaurant, actually 2, and now 3, to prove that this works. We have 3 restaurants in the central London, so if you're ever around, stop by. The last one has been opened just recently, so it's not even on the deck. Where we basically personalized every meal to every customer. We do about 420 meals an hour, each personalized to each person. 93% of meals are personalized, in fairness. 7% are kind of off the shelf. So if you want to see one in action, go to London. I can't possibly demonstrate what that does here. So today, 3.5 years in, we've opened this restaurant, we've proved it works, and now we're ready. We ended up, in November, we went to market to lease our software to other restaurants who want to do the same. So let's talk a little bit. Why personalization? I mean, a few people today have spoken about it, yesterday as well, personalization. But first, on the left-hand side, if you look, is the consumer, that's you, right? So we said we're all different. So mass producing and mass feeding us the same thing over and over again, it's not worked out very well for us. We have a global health crisis right now in the world. We have the highest obesity rate, higher diabetes, type 2 diabetes in the world, and it's all due to food. So why? Well, I think we deserve better. I was obviously an extreme example of getting sick, but why should we? Why shouldn't we live healthier and better? And there's also, this is a double win, not only for the consumer, but also the restaurant. When people personalize their food, they're more likely to come back there more often than go into another place where they just have a mass-produced food. Second, people tend to spend more, about 14% more when they personalize than when they take something off the shelf. Mostly because they get more of the good stuff and less of the bad stuff. Or like the fillers are cheap, like your rice, your bread, and the good stuff, your meat, your avocado, are more expensive. So they end up shifting kind of behaviors. And that's more profitable. So I'll give you a very short demo for those that don't know it. On the right, you can see basically kind of broken down the menu in Lego blocks, and you can choose kind of what proteins you want, what sides, what bases, sauces, taste, texture, and you create your meal. It's like playing with Lego again, but food this time. And the meal is ready in about 2-3 minutes. So it's all freshly cooked, and I can't tell you how we do it in 2-3 minutes, but you can go see it. We actually cook every 15 minutes, small batches. We forecast the sales that we're going to do, and then we assemble the food in less than a minute. So, and then once you kind of pick the things that you feel like having, you end up giving you transparency and control over the quantities and nutritional content. So you get to see that it's a dashboard that shows you how many of your 5 a day you're having, what we call them 10 a day. You can see a macronutrient breakdown, calories. You can adjust the quantities of everything you're having. We have an algorithm that helps you make these choices as well if you don't want to think about it. But the idea is this is what full personalization looks like. To give you an insight into kind of how we see of it is that what makes us unique are our taste preferences, our height, weight, lifestyle, goals. I'm trying to build muscle, lose weight, sleep better, etc. Our DNA, a blood test. Our labs are here. Hello. Basically your biodome, everything that makes you unique. We are the software to help people aggregate that data and make better decisions about food, soup, coffee, smoothies, wine. It doesn't matter what. That's kind of our vision and what we're doing. We've done food at the moment, and we're going to go into other things recently. So at the beginning, I said that we do 2 things. First, we help consumers personalize, and second, we help restaurants produce this food. So why? Why do we need to help restaurants? It's basically because the restaurant operating model is outdated. It hasn't really changed in about 100 years. 2 examples. First, they're based on mass production of food, and as discussed before, we think that's going to change. So restaurants are very good at producing 3 or 10 things over and over again and selling them. They're not good at making individual meals. Second, it's really heavily dependent on people. And that's not a bad thing. We all need jobs. But the people doing jobs we hate. I mean, who here in the audience loves washing dishes? No? No one? Right, so no one for the record. Who here in the audience loves typing things up, taking someone's order and putting it into a system like this? No one does. So there's all these tasks that we end up doing in a restaurant, moving plates around, kind of boring stuff that were not value add to anyone. So our vision is to automate those. We're already doing quite a few of those. So we enable the people that work in restaurants to do the more fun, creative bit, either creating food, menus, or talking to customers. But kind of get rid of everything in the middle. So the restaurants also kind of needs it right now. The food costs are going up, especially as we try to eat more organic, but our salaries are not. So, how are we all going to eat organic and spend the same amount of money on food? Labor costs are going up, minimum wage is going up, and then all sorts of business taxes are going up in the UK and US, for example. So we build an operating system to kind of solve those issues through automation. So I'll give you a quick example. What that means is instead of having a waiter write down your order on a piece of paper and then going into an e-post to insert it, we actually put that in the consumer's hand through apps, kiosks, digital menus. The consumers end up ordering what they want, and it goes straight into the kitchen, as opposed to a piece of paper, to a human, then to a computer, and then into the kitchen. We automate a lot of the order placing of orders, so phoning up suppliers, chasing orders, that's all kind of automatically. Right, so almost done. Just to kind of give you an insight to our mindset and how we look. On the left, there's data. There's a lot of customer insights that we have about who they are, what they like, their taste preferences, their activity level, etc. And we also, having digitized the kitchen, we also have big insights into the kitchen bit. So production, throughput, etc. We leverage this data to kind of deliver personalized food experience marketing, but also transform operations. And then on the right is kind of the benefits from the restaurant perspective, which is higher average transaction value, higher frequency of visit, and lower labor costs. So, and this is our operating system that we developed. It's kind of fully integrated, that handles everything from order taking, supply chain management, data analytics. And it's the first of its kind to do this, and to the extent that we're doing it. Right. I've also, Johan suggested I should mention this. We're in the middle of our Series A, so if you know anyone that's interested, please do connect us. Lastly, and this is my conclusion, is we're here to make food personal. We're really trying to shake up an industry that hasn't changed in 100 years. And this is our vision. On the left is a person who's doing whatever they're doing, and on the right is their personalized meal. So if you're willing to help us out, spread the word, help us make food personal.